Thanks, listeners. It is Wednesday, and in advance of today's regular Elko County Commission meeting, we're so pleased to feature our County Commissioner Delmo Andreozzi in studio. We'll be going over some agenda items for today's meeting. And Delmo, you also brought a very special guest with you today.
I did. I brought our County Treasurer, Cheryl, and I thank you for joining us here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for having me.
Absolutely. Cheryl Paul is a local elected official, our Elko County Treasurer. And Delmo, the reason it's important we brought Cheryl today is that we did want to get out some important information, and it is regarding a clerical error regarding our tax bills. The good news is that this doesn't have to do with any sort of malfeasance, or it has nothing to do with anything that was deliberate. It was simply an oversight. It's taxes that we would have paid anyway, is what we're coming to understand. Is that right, Commissioner?
That's correct. And I think maybe, let me just back up a little bit, because I think that this information is just starting to circulate now. So let me back up a little bit and just go over the history a little bit, and then for some of the technical stuff, we'll have Cheryl help us out here a little bit. So basically, in a nutshell, if everybody remembers, when pay as you go was defeated, Elko County did absorb 50 cents of the 75 cents that the Elko County School District had. At that time, we dedicated 6 cents to our WFPP, which is our Wildland Fire Protection Plan. It's kind of an insurance, and then we had the balance of 44 cents, and that was locked up in a capital fund for capital needs. And then moving forward from that, during the last legislative session, we had AB 519, which required that the county levy a tax of one penny up to 25 cents to the school district for capital needs, and that levy wouldn't have been subject to the abatement rules, which the abatement rules have been in place. And this is where it gets really technical, so I don't want to go into it too much because it is a little bit technical. But taxes, when they were raised in the past, they were abated. There was an abatement amount. So 519 said that this tax wouldn't have been abated. But let me go on a little bit more and clarify to say that it's not a new tax. The 44 cents that the county had in our capital fund, all we were simply doing was shifting, because we didn't want to increase the tax burden any more than what it already was. So we shifted from the 44 cents, 20 cents to the Elko County School District for capital needs. So going to where we are today, it's my understanding. Please, Cheryl, correct me if I'm incorrect, but we all get tax bills, and you see your tax bill in the mail, and you see all the different your property taxes pay for a lot of governmental services, including if you live in the city, you pay city taxes. If you live anywhere in the county, you pay. There's a big tax district being Elko County School District, which are in the entire county, where other tax districts are boundaries, like the ECVA, for example, or the TV district. So there are some other overlaying taxing entities within that in that greater scheme, and you can see that, and you can see the proportionate share of tax that goes to each entity. And so apparently, and I haven't double checked this on my tax bill, but as I understand it, an individual had come to the county and brought it to our attention that the 20 cents that we intended to shift over to the school district did indeed show up on the tax bill. However, the amount that it would have collected, which was almost like $3.7 million, starting from July 1st running to June 30th, that's when our calendar year is on taxes, it would have generated nearly $3.7 million in revenue for school capital. So in this individual's case, they saw that there was no dollar figure like there would be for any of the other taxing districts. So apparently, somehow, some way, though that money got abated. I don't think it was the intent of the commission for that to be abated. Like I said, we were talking about the kind of revenue that was going to generate for the school district. That was our intent, and somehow maybe there's a clerical issue, but I just need to reassure everybody and say that this is it wasn't a new tax. In fact, because it was abated, your tax actually probably went down because of this abatement process. So exactly how that happened, or what our next steps are going to be, I think it's I think somehow in the process something happened. I don't know what it was. It wasn't the intent. So we just we're going to work towards. And it's unfortunate because it's complicated, right? It's complicated stuff, and people may not understand. They just think their taxes are going up, but it really is a slide over, and we're going to need to make a correction to this tax that was levied. So that's kind of I think a pretty good general summary of where we have been and where we are currently. So, any additional details or any other questions that you may have, I have our expert here that will walk you through whatever question you may have, Lori.
Thanks, Delmo. Delmo Andreozzi is our Elko County Commissioner. It's not on the commission agenda today, but I'm sure it's something that if it needs to be, it could appear on a future agenda. But Cheryl, was that a pretty good assessment that our commissioner gave?
Yes,
Okay.
it was a perfect explanation of everything. Everything that I calculated out, on average, it's going to affect everyone's tax bill roughly $155. So if your tax bill that you originally received in July was $3,000, now the new bill that you'll receive will reflect $3,155. When we talked about rebilling, we worked with Rand, we worked with the assessor, Rand, our district attorney. We didn't want to divide it into the 4 installments because the first installment has already passed. It didn't feel right sending out a tax bill for a date that had already passed, put people in a panic that they were going to be penalized. So we decided to divvy out the amount between the second, the third, and the fourth installment. We didn't want to put it on the fourth installment because a lot of those tax bills that are impacted have an escrow account in place. So we wouldn't want to put that $155 on the fourth installment because that would tell the mortgage company the forecast for next year, each of your installments are going to be $155 more. So we didn't want to do that. So we did divvy it out between the 3 remaining installments. It's important that we give 30-day billing notice. That's why we wanted to get it out as soon as possible because the next installment is due on October 6th. Looking at the top 10 of those impacted, it's, everybody's impacted. I'm sure Delmo's impacted, myself, Lori. But the top 10 are mining, mine support, and casinos. Nevada Gold Mines alone was the top one that was impacted, and it looks like theirs is $266,000, almost $267,000. So again, it's something that we have to be compliant, and we have to collect for the school cap projects.
And Lori, if I could just really quickly, because Cheryl mentioned Rand's name, and I just wanted for clarification to let the listening audience know that Rand is from the district attorney's office, and he serves as our attorney for the county commission and the county at large. So when she was saying she was consulting with that's when she was referring to Rand, she was referring to our attorney. And I think it's also important to say that, it's so interesting, and a great civic opportunity to understand this. We have so many touch points in the county on a parcel of land. You have the recorder, so the recorder takes every land that's ever subdivided and creates deeds, or it's sold, and this deed, it's this master file of deeds and property recordation, properties that are created, and the ownerships are who has liens on all these properties. Then you have the assessor's office who comes up with the assessment, and then you have the treasurer's office who does the collection, and then all the taxes that come through us that get distributed out to the cities and other like the redevelopment plan in the city of Elko, say for example, those come through the treasurer's office. So it's really a complex organization, a lot of different touch points on just one parcel of land. But I thought it was important for me to just clarify that consultation with Rand, our legal attorney.
Thank you, Delmo. Delmo Andreozzi is our county commissioner, and then Cheryl Paul, our county treasurer here. And again, just explaining that it appears to be, it's a mistake. It was a clerical error of sorts. It's tax that we would have paid anyway. The overall impact is about $3.7 million, and it's just for this quarter, I believe, Cheryl. And you have indicated that the county will notify all mortgage companies of the change if an escrow account is in place. And then I suppose if you've already paid your property tax in full, you don't have a mortgage, then you might receive an adjustment in the mail?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else that you want to add? I mean, I know that this is not, it's not pleasant, and it doesn't, it's something that you are taking complete responsibility for, Cheryl, and I want listeners to understand that this is a very serious matter for you. You've taken this to heart, I can tell.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sorry that it happened.
Yeah.
And again, we're all human. And AB 19, this is something, this is new. This was passed in 2023. Mm-hmm. This was a requirement of the Elko County Commissioners to pass this tax.
It was specific to Elko County if you look at AB 519.
Yes. And so, Delmo, it's unrelated, but we do know county commissioners at one point, you bristled at this, and you had filed a legal challenge to being pointed out.
We did, and thank you for that, because I think it's really important for me to say that all of AB 519 is not all bad. I mean, the account they set up for rural schools and being able to leverage funds, that's a great idea. All of that was really, really good. And also the fact that the state actually appropriated $64.5 million for a new school in Owyhee. That is fantastic. We those are great elements of the bill, and I don't want to make sure that gets overshadowed by the piece that, and I can say for me that creates concern for me, is that Elko County was singled out in this action. And it wasn't so much singled out as much as it was, if you don't do it, we are going to do it, and we're going to put it at 25 cents, and that would have put us over the cap. And that cap at 366, again, this is super technical, but at the 366 cap, we would have been over that, and we would have been the highest taxed entity in the entire state for property taxes. That's the part that I don't think is fair. They never even did. I don't think, my temperature, my sense of the board is that when we took that 50 cents, I think there was always an intent on the board to share that back, after maybe a period of time, or, and part of that AB 519 put that infrastructure coalition together, which is all good with help explaining and looking at these projects. So all of those elements are really good, and I don't think Elko County ever intended on keeping that in perpetuity, but nobody asked. And I think I'm going to go out on a limb, and because I'm a politician, I can say this. I think this is where, we had representation on the other side of our county from people that don't live here and really understand, didn't even call us and let us know that this was being heard by the leg, had no idea that this was even out there. And that was all redistricting that created that. And I'm not saying that, like I said, there are some wonderful elements of the bill. It's just that one tiny piece that, and I think that the precedent that sets really forces us to take a position on that, because if we let that go, they can do that to any other taxing entity, because now you have the precedent that says you can do it. So that's the piece that's being challenged.
Thank you, Delmo, for, again, the explanation. Any word on where that might be in the system, or?
I don't know where that is right now. That's a great question. I had, I have a pretty good communication with Tim Robb, who is the governor's liaison to rural Nevada, and I talk with him pretty frequently, and we visited about that again, because again, I think it's important that I'm using this explanation here to explain to you and our listeners at least the way I see this, I use that opportunity as the same way to explain it to the state, how it is that I feel and how I feel like we were singled out. So, I talked to Tim Robb also, and I have great relationship with him, and so I'm just not quite sure where that is in process. But just like anything else, as you know, whenever you're in a lawsuit, it seems like they just go on and go on and go on. So, but I think it was important, and I push that. I think it's important that we did get into that lawsuit only because of the precedent that it set.
All right. So again, just recapping briefly, the county commissioners did approve this measure. It was unanimous for the 20-cent tax rate allocation, March 20th of 2024. The intent was not to raise property tax, but to reallocate the existing tax rate to all the entities. The 20-cent school capital projects amount came from the Elko County Capital Projects Fund, reducing it from 44 cents in fiscal year 2024 to 24 cents fiscal year 2025. Again, an error, an oversight. Something didn't happen in that short period of time, again, between July 1st and June 30th, in that the tax was not implemented. And so local taxpayers, we owe about $3.7 million collectively, and that will be accounted for. Cheryl, does that
Yes.
sound fair?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again for being on the program, for coming forward with this issue. Thanks to all the different entities involved, and we all learned a lesson as usual whenever mistakes are made.
I get to the point where I wonder, when am I going to stop learning lessons? But that's a good sign that we get to learn lessons, I think. And I don't want to belabor this at all, but I just want to make one more point, Lori, and that is that I told you that the bill allows you to even go above the tax cap. So the commission action was very clear. We did not, we shifted tax rate over, and we could have legally, by this AB 519, gone over the cap. It's the only bill that I'm aware of that allows you to do that. And again, Elko County Commission was concerned about increasing that tax over that, and that's why we shifted it and absorbed that. So again, I'm just trying to articulate the case, showing what our intent was.
All right. Commissioner Delmo Andreozzi, again, in advance of this afternoon's regular meeting. This wasn't on the agenda, but it is an issue going forward, and hopefully it'll just be a little wave in an otherwise smooth surface and get us into the next few months. Cheryl, thank you.
Oh, you betcha.
Thank you so much for
You bet.
coming
Not
here.
a problem.
And you are
Getting on top of
welcome.
this.
Anything else from your office? I guess, maybe you have some great news that you want to share.
Nothing off the top of my head. No.
All right.
No,
Very
thank
good.
you so much.
Business as usual.
Business as usual.
And you have an amazing staff. I do want to credit the staff of the Elko County Treasurer's Office. They're always, it's fun to go into that part of the county courthouse. I just have to say, I feel a lot of pride. I like to pay my tax bill in person because I enjoy that historic building, and I enjoy the people that work there, and you all have a lot of pride in your office, so thank you.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Well, and if I can, and I don't want to embarrass Cheryl, but I think you're serving a leadership role in the state treasurer's group, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yes.
I am the president for the Association of County Treasurers for Nevada. Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for picking that up. And because that always reflects well on rural Nevada when we have people in positions of leadership like that, Cheryl.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes. So that'll conclude that portion of the discussion. Again, anyone who has questions, you can reach out to the treasurer's office. But again, just know that this is not a new tax. This is not something that was taken from you. This is something that we all owe collectively as a community. And we should be proud that we can pay taxes in this country that we live in this county, in this state. I guess I might be different, Delmo, but I am proud when I can pay taxes, and I can afford to pay taxes, so I'm proud of that.
Again, when you look at your tax bill, it funds quite a bit of
Yes.
Public service. I mean, the only revenue really that governments get are property taxes and sales taxes, and that's your police and fire and some of the stuff that's not as glamorous, but it's all important work that is done for the benefit of the communities.
That's right, and I like looking down that list and seeing all the ways that we all benefit. And I remember being a teenager and riding the bus and having my mom point out to me when I got my first paycheck. I said, "Where's my money?" And she said, "Oh, well, that bus you ride, you're helping pay for that. And other people helped pay for that before you paid for that. And other people will continue to pay for that bus you rode." So until you could afford your own car. So there you go. We're all part of this system. So should we veer back onto the agenda?
Let's do that.
Let's do that. And, I just want to pick, since we were having so much fun with that conversation, let's go ahead and talk about the request for the Missouri plan, Delmo, if
sure.
we can. Okay.
Not a problem. So let's see here. Let me get to where you. Okay, so basically, what we have is a request to just send a request to the Secretary of State to consider utilizing the Missouri plan. So what does that mean? So let me just, and I personally don't see any harm sending a request asking about this. Although I wouldn't want to just pigeonhole it to a Missouri plan. I mean, I think basically the message should be, what kind of options are there? Let me just say that the state allows through, and I'm not exactly sure if it's a Secretary of State's decision or if it comes through NRS or just exactly the mechanics of it all. But there is a methodology that is in the state that allows you to hand count ballots. And there was a few folks that are very interested in hand counting ballots, along with a commissioner who actually ran our state system, and it was just a real challenge. So I mean, it's not doable. It's not workable if a county chose to exercise that right. That right is very encumbered by the process. So I think the request is, hey, look at this process, and it's not demanding, it's just a request. Would you consider amending the Nevada process so it's more doable if a county chooses to do hand counts? That won't be the case. There's no way that can happen for this election cycle. Those deadlines have come and gone, and so there's no changes this time. Only consideration would be going forward, and who knows, whether or not they'll consider it or not. I have no idea. It's just simply a letter of request asking this Secretary of State to consider, amending the methodology.
So it is important to point out that on the County Commission agenda, Delmo, it comes under the heading of Elko County Clerk. But the county clerk is also attached a letter saying she did not request this. This is coming from a commissioner. So the county clerk, Becky Plunkett, did not request this. She's not requesting the letter.
So as far as the placement on the agenda, I didn't have anything to do with that, or, it falls under the purview of the county clerks. So I assume that's why it's there, but I honestly can't answer that question.
Okay. And that's why, again, this is just pointing out, in fairness, accuracy, transparency, this is a request from a group known as the Coalition of Nevada Voters. Now, there is a letter that is attached, and it appears to come from county commissioners. And it says, Elko County Commission is asking you allow the Missouri plan for hand counting paper ballots. We have a large group of citizens interested in hand counting here in Elko, and our commission voted earlier this year to study the feasibility of that idea. Now, it does go on to explain, to talk about what you just described, an unsuccessful attempt. But it is important to point out that while the county commissioners will certainly decide on this issue today, it is really not a large group of represented voters. There are 35,000 registered active and inactive voters in Elko County. The Nevada Coalition of Voters local group, what do we see, maybe 20, 30 people at these local meetings? Yeah,
I would say on average, but I think to your point, I mean, that letter is in there. It would come from the county commission. I guess that was the first part of your, it wasn't a question. I think maybe it was a statement that you were
just
making.
Pointing out.
Yeah, pointing out,
that,
yeah.
So it's not from Becky Plunkett.
Yeah, and it being on the county commission, and this group or any other group could send a letter as well, or anything else. Again, I think just again the way I look at it, if the state has the ability to do, if they have regulations that allow you to do a hand count, but the regulations are so restrictive that doesn't allow you to do it, maybe there's an opportunity to look for, or maybe they just don't want to allow hand counts. Maybe that's, and that would be their prerogative. But if they say, here's a hand count, but the hand count is, I think it's a way for us to communicate that the current system doesn't work. But I hear what you're saying. You do, but I've seen that group fill the commission chambers too. So I don't even know how many people seats, but I've seen them fill it too. So, and certainly that's where a lot of this discussion's coming from. And I think the other thing, there was a lot of discussion about, there was something that came out from Searchlight, or can't remember the publication that came out, and I know that one of the commissioners talked to a PhD in mathematics and actually wrote a nice little white letter kind of saying that any malfeasance in the balloting in Elko County didn't appear like that took place. So
there was no malfeasance.
But what I'm saying is that same commissioner, also reached out to say, hey, can you check into this? And that seems to have helped too, because I think it's just about facts, and then you have facts, and then you have people with their own perceptions, right? So, and you can't do anything about people's perceptions. You just got to try to deal with the facts and do the best that you can. So like I said, from my perspective, it's not so much about that group or that, if the state's going to have, if they're going to have hand counting as a process, then they ought to, do they know that it's unworkable? I guess maybe that would be another way to ask the question. I don't know.
It seems like you are trying to appease the various members of the group, Commissioner, and I think that, politically people can understand that. Now, the county clerk does say, after researching the matter through the Missouri Secretary of State, Becky Plunkett, she wrote, I found Missouri does not use the method laid out in this letter as a primary way of tabulation for an election. The Missouri method has only been used as an audit tool or a way to recount election results.
Yeah, and I think just like when I opened up, I said, I don't know that I want to pigeonhole it to, I don't know what the Missouri plan is. So why would I want to tie it to a plan that I don't even know anything about? I think the question is, can you look at the way we do maybe there are some other plans out there that you can look at. I don't necessarily, I haven't researched the Missouri plan to even know what that's about. So for me, I think that's very narrow. I think for me, a letter would be, hey, would you consider some other methodology that makes it simpler? And maybe you use such as, but I don't even know what the Missouri plan looks like.
You did say a couple of important things. This, no matter what the outcome of today's county commission vote, it would not impact the fall election, November. But I guess that does beg the question, Delmo, is there ever going to be a time when the Elko County commissioners simply support the Elko County clerk? She's an elected official.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times, even before this one, remember this situation came up, and I think if you look at the county record, I think a lot of the county officials were saying, hey, we have a lot of confidence, we have a lot of faith in our staff, and we trust them. So I think we've said it. We haven't necessarily had it as an action item on the agenda, but I know it's been said in a public meeting.
It just seems as though at some point, looking at all the facts, as you said, you can't change perception, which for some people is a reality, but looking at all the facts, there is no evidence of any interference in the election locally, and certainly not statewide, not to the depth that the group is complaining or asserting, and that at some point, too, it actually does create a sense of it disenfranchises people from voting. It does cause them to be concerned and to doubt that we have a secure local election. Because why would you want to go from a voting tabulation system, Delmo, that is done electronically, that is done in a matter of minutes as compared to hours? If Elko County were to go to hand counting paper ballots, and I've been covering elections for 30 years in Elko County, we would become irrelevant. Nevada would have no choice but to pass us by. The rest of the country wouldn't care because they can't sit around and wait for people who are marking paper ballots with felt markers. They just can't.
Well, the other thing is, I think, like I said, I think that the last time this issue came up, or not specific, but related to this, I said, we don't even know what the unintended consequences are, right? There could be. So if we don't complete it on time, what does that mean? So that kind of fits right into your relevancy thing. And the other thing that I've said, and, I've had an opportunity to canvass these votes for the last 10 years that I've been a county commissioner. And when you look at that, I don't see any anomalies. I can see I can see the registered Republicans. I can see the registered Democrats. I can see the registered independents. I can see the percentage of voters, which is very low. Unfortunately, I'd love to see more people exercise their right to vote. But needless to say, I haven't seen personally. I'm not a mathematician, but I go, this looks like it. It looks like it represents our county. It looks like the results match the percentage-wise of registered Republican, Democrat, and independent. So I personally haven't seen any red flags there myself. And I have talked to people that I'm in running with circles. I ask people about what it is they think, and a lot of people, it's interesting, and why is it? But a lot of people that I talk to have concerns about the election process. They don't necessarily point to any one particular thing or another, but this whole conversation, regardless of what political affiliation, has everybody kind of wondering,
and that's again why when we belabor the conversation, it does bring up questions. I think too, Delmo, it's fair to say that common sense things like voter ID. I think the latest poll is more than 60% of Nevadans, in line with the rest of the country, say voter ID is not a big deal. If you're asked to present an ID, in order to cure your signature or something like that, then that's not a problem. I guess another question, and then we can probably change topics. I know it's kind of an exhausting issue for some people, but has the Elko County GOP requested this?
Not that I'm aware of. I just know that a lot of these things have been championed or brought forward by Commissioner Steniger, so I'm assuming that this is where this is coming from. He's been kind of acts as a liaison, and I don't know what his relationship is with the GOP. I honestly couldn't tell you.
Right. And again, this is a request from the Nevada Coalition of Voters, which is a minority, not a majority group in Elko County. In fact, if you were to talk to most people, they probably don't know that this group exists. But their influence could make significant impacts on the way that we access voting in this county. So.
Well, and I do think that that's I think that's a great point too. I just talked about voter turnout, which is, I think that, how do we even match up with Clark County or Washoe County? We don't have the numbers to do it. But when we only having 14 or 15% of the voters come out and vote,
well, that's in the primary, but you got to know something. The reason you don't have a higher primary turnout, Delmo, is you have a significant number of independent voters. They are not registered as Democrats or Republicans, and Democrats. There's nothing for those people to participate in. So of course that is historic. That's always been low.
Yeah.
And then in the presidential, you'll see it come back up again.
But my point is being involved.
I see.
That's my point about being involved. I think if you have this is just like a group of people that have a concern, and they're using their resources to get to the commission.
Why everybody else is at work.
Well, it may be, but I'm saying that everybody could, if there are other people on the opposing, I'm certainly open to hearing that as well. That's all I mean.
I'm sure you would hear from them if all of a sudden they went to vote and had to fill out a hand-counted paper ballot and then realized that their vote result wouldn't be available for days.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just the conversation that will be happening, I'm sure. If not at the county commission meeting, it's happening elsewhere. Delmo, the other thing that's kind of exciting for Elko County, and I'm surprised that there hasn't been a lot of news of this even in Nevada, is that Utah's lawsuit with the U.S. Supreme Court. This is the closest Elko County has ever been to this historic goal ever since I've lived in this county. All Elko County has wanted is to have local control of vast tracts of public land, and this is now before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and this is, it's interesting because I watched the press release that Governor Cox did in Utah, and really it's just focusing on the BLM lands, not the national forest, but it's just the BLM lands. And
But that's a big start.
It is a big start, and so the question before us is, do we want to file an amicus brief? And I suspect that this, like you said, this has been something that's been important to Elko County for a long time. Amicus brief allows us to be a friend of the court, and if we have any evidence that supports Utah's case, then it can be admitted as evidence. So this has, this goes way back to things, Sagebrush Rebellion, the Shovel Brigade, and
Although Dean
and so on and
Rhodes
so
would
forth.
not want us to say that, because Dean Rhodes said the Sagebrush Rebellion was not about that. That was
Oh.
about AUMs and grazing, of
Well,
which he helped to craft.
Well, let me just say
I'm
that's
just
what,
going to make the record straight.
that's
yes.
fine. That's just what I've
Okay.
always heard. Okay?
I know, and that's why he's not here to tell you.
All right.
And I will tell you that
Fair
he told
enough.
me. Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes, but Sagebrush Rebellion was an important. That was an important point in time in history for Elko County because we were able to assert opinions. We had the ear of Governor, at the time Reagan, and then former President Reagan, and then we had other people, including Senator Rhodes, who got a seat at the table, right, to help craft what became the Animal Unit Month, the grazing fees.
Well, that's it. Thank you for
Yes,
that. I
yes.
appreciate that. See, never too old to learn, right?
Well, and not my only, but one of my regrets is that we did not get to write Senator Rhodes' story before he passed. And but I know it concerned him, Delmo, when the Shovel Brigade, when that rose to prominence because people were tying in the Sagebrush Rebellion, and he said, no, it wasn't the same thing. People may use that for their political purposes, but it wasn't the same. So he didn't approach it the same way. That's not how it was crafted. And unfortunately, when people aren't alive to tell us their story, we want to make sure we get it right.
Sure.
Right? That legacy. So,
Yeah, of course.
Yes, so.
I hope when I'm gone, people get my story right.
Well, that's
I
why
don't know
we
what's
have
gonna
you
happen.
come on the radio. So thank you so much because you are part of the public record that way. So these programs are archived. But yes, the Shovel Brigade, County Commissioner Travis Gerber sits on the county commission where his father sat. And that was very important for Grant Gerber. In fact, some could say he gave his life for that cause and that issue. So this, again, just pointing out that this, before the U.S. Supreme Court, brought by Utah. And we always knew all along Utah was the only state that had the resources and the political power to do this, whether it was roadless areas or this, it's finally there. I can't believe it's there.
Well, it'll be interesting, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
once the decision's made, we live with the outcome.
With a consequence, once you have shot that elk, you have to drag it down the mountain.
That's so true.
Yes, because there's a lot that goes into managing millions and millions and millions of acres of public land. So, Delmo, thank you so much. I
Thank
know you
you,
have
Lori.
to get downtown, and appreciate you bringing Cheryl on the program.
Yeah.
Cheryl,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much again.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience sitting through that. I hope we got to the most of the agenda items.
We did. I was kind of hoping we'd talk about the Montello water line because that's another really super interesting
Oh yeah, you're going to sell
situation.
that.
But let's save that for a
Okay.
discussion for another day.
All right.
Shall we? Because it's really got some long history to it. So
Well, and let's
it's like
bring it back.
It's like the story that never ends. So
Kind of like, wresting public lands into local control. So
There you go.
All right, Delmo, thank you so
thanks,
much.
Lori. Have a great day.
Thank you, listeners. Thanks for joining us for Elko Live today here on KELK with Commissioner Delmo Andreozzi.